You know that feeling when your whole life changes in 3 seconds? When someone says something so quiet, but it echoes louder than a scream. That's what happened to me. And I'm still not sure if she saved me or destroyed me. Let me take you back. Please comment right away. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. It was a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were always negotiation days at the firm. The day we closed deals. The day money changed hands. The day lives changed direction.
I was good at my job.
23 years in corporate law. Never lost a case that mattered. Never missed a signature. Never questioned a contract. Until her. The conference room was on the 42nd floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows. City stretched out below like a game board. Everything small. Everything manageable from up there. 7 people sat around that mahogany table. My client. Their client. Lawyers on both sides. A notary. Standard Tuesday. The deal was simple. My client was selling his family's pharmaceutical company. 3 generations of work.
Gone.
Signed away. But the money was enough to retire 10 families. He was 71. Tired. Ready. Or so I thought. The papers were perfect. I'd reviewed them 14 times. Every clause. Every comma. Every way this could go wrong. Eliminated. I slid the contract across the table. My client reached for the pen. And that's when I heard it. Don't sign that. 3 words. Barely a whisper. But they cut through that room like a knife through silk. Everyone froze. I mean froze. Like someone hit pause on reality. The pen stopped halfway to the paper. My client's hand trembled. The buyers shifted in their seats. You could hear the city humming 42 floors below. You could hear breath catching in throats. I turned. She was standing in the doorway. I'd never seen her before. I would have remembered. She wasn't beautiful in that obvious way. Not the kind of woman who walks into rooms and stops traffic. But something about her face, it was like looking at someone who'd survived something terrible and came out the other side changed. Mid-40s maybe. Dark hair pulled back. Simple gray suit. But her eyes. God, her eyes looked like they'd been carrying the weight of truth for too long. Who are you? The lead buyer stood up. Angry. Confused. This is a private meeting. You can't just... I'm Margaret Ross, she said quietly. Director of Research and Development. For the company you're about to buy. My client went pale. I wasn't aware we had a director of R&D, the buyer said slowly. That's because your due diligence was incomplete, she replied. Her voice was steady.
Calm.
But underneath, there was something burning. She walked into the room. Slow steps. Purposeful. Sir, she looked at my client, the old man who'd built this company from nothing. If you sign that contract, you'll destroy everything your father built. Everything you've protected. Everything that matters. Margaret, he started, but his voice cracked. They don't know, she continued. She wasn't yelling. She didn't need to. They haven't seen the files. They don't know what we're actually sitting on. The buyer's lawyer leaned forward. Ms. Ross, if you have concerns about disclosure, there are proper channels. The proper channels failed. She cut him off. Or were deliberately avoided. I should have stopped her. That was my job. Protect the deal. Protect my client. Keep the machine moving. But something in my gut twisted. I'd spent 23 years trusting contracts more than people. Trusting numbers more than instinct. Trusting systems. And this woman, this stranger, was telling me the system had missed something. What files? I heard myself ask. Everyone turned to look at me. Margaret's eyes met mine. And for half a second I saw something in them. Relief maybe. Or recognition. Like she'd been waiting for someone to ask the right question. The trials, she said softly. The human trials for compound CX-9. The drug they're buying the rights to. The drug they think is going to make them billionaires. The trials were successful, the buyer said quickly. Too quickly. We've reviewed every. You reviewed what they showed you, Margaret interrupted. Not what they hid. The room exploded. Voices overlapping. Accusations flying. Lawyers reaching for phones. My client sat frozen in his chair, staring at the unsigned contract like it had turned into a snake. But I was watching Margaret. She stood there,
Calm.
unmoved by the chaos, like she'd already lived through worse storms than this. "Everyone out," I said. The room went quiet again. "Excuse me?" The buyer glared at me. "Everyone out," I repeated, "except my client and Ms. Ross. We need 10 minutes. This is highly irregular. This whole situation is irregular," I said firmly. 10 minutes. Then we reconvene. The buyers left. Reluctantly. Angrily. But they left.
The door closed.
3 of us remained. The old man. The woman who'd stopped everything. And me, suddenly unsure which side I was on. "Talk," I said to Margaret. She opened her briefcase. Pulled out a folder. Set it on the table. "CX9 was supposed to treat early-stage dementia," she began. "Revolutionary. Life-changing. The trials showed a 92% improvement rate." "I know," I said. "I read the reports." "You read the edited reports," she corrected gently. "You didn't read about the 8 patients who died during extended use, or the 14 who developed permanent neurological damage, or the cover-up that followed." My stomach dropped. My client's hands were shaking now. "Margaret, I didn't know. I swear I didn't." "I know you didn't," she said, and her voice softened. "But your board did. And they structured this sale to pass the liability to someone else before the truth came out." I sat down. 23 years. Never questioned a contract. And suddenly I was staring at one built on graves. "Why now?" I asked her. "Why wait until this moment?" Margaret looked at me. Really looked at me. "Because I've been trying to expose this for 9 months," she said quietly. "I went to the board. They silenced me. I went to regulators. They said they'd investigate. Nothing happened. I went to journalists. They wanted more proof. More time." She gestured to the contract. "This was my last chance. Once that signature goes down, the sale completes. The company dissolves. The evidence gets buried. And those 8 families never get justice." I looked at my client, the old man who'd trusted me to handle this. "Did you know?" I asked him directly. His eyes filled with tears. "I suspected something was wrong," he whispered. 6 months ago. "But they told me, they said it was just competitor rumors. They said the deal was clean." "It's not clean," Margaret said. "It's poison dressed as profit." I picked up the contract. Looked at it. All those perfect clauses. All those careful words. All that hidden rot underneath. "If we don't sign," I said slowly, "the buyers will sue for breach." "Let them," Margaret replied. "They'll destroy what's left of the company. The company deserves to be destroyed," she said, and her voice finally cracked. "If this is what it became." I turned to my client. "It's your choice," I told him. "I can't make it for you." The old man looked at the pen, then at Margaret, then at me. "I built this company to help people," he said quietly. "My father started it because his mother died from a disease no one understood. We were supposed to save lives. Not. He couldn't finish. "Then don't sign," Margaret whispered. He pushed the pen away. Just like that. 71 years old. 3 generations of work. Enough money to retire 10 families.
Gone.
But something else happened in that moment. Something I didn't expect. I saw my client's shoulders straighten. Saw the weight lift just a little. Saw him look at Margaret with something like gratitude. Like he'd been drowning and she'd thrown him a rope. And I realized, sometimes saving someone means stopping them from making the biggest mistake of their life, even if it costs them everything. The conference room door opened. The buyers walked back in, confident, ready to close. They saw the unsigned contract, saw my client's face, saw me standing beside Margaret. "We have a problem," I said. That's putting it mildly. The next 3 hours were a war. Threats. Countersuits. Accusations flying across the table. The buyer's lawyers went nuclear. My client sat silent. Margaret stood firm.
And me?
I was doing something I'd never done before. Fighting against the deal I'd built. By 6 p.m., everyone was gone except Margaret and me. The sun was setting over the city. 42 floors below, people were heading home. Normal lives. Normal problems. Up here, we'd just blown up a multi-million-dollar deal and possibly several careers. Thank you, Margaret said quietly. I was staring out the window, trying to process what I'd just done. Don't thank me yet, I replied. They're going to come after you. Hard. I know. They'll bury you in legal fees. Destroy your reputation. Make sure you never work in this industry again. I know. I turned to look at her. Then why? I asked. Why risk everything? She was quiet for a long moment. Because 8 people died, she finally said. And their families deserve to know why. Even if it costs me everything. Something in my chest tightened. I'd spent 23 years in this business. Built a reputation. Made partner at 35. Won cases that seemed impossible. But I couldn't remember the last time I'd done something, because it was right. Not profitable. Not strategic. Just right. Where will you go? I asked her. She smiled sadly. I don't know. Home, I guess. Wait for the lawsuits. You have a lawyer? Can't afford one now. I spent everything trying to expose this. I shouldn't have said what I said next. I really shouldn't have. But I did anyway. I'll represent you, I heard myself say. Margaret's eyes widened. What? Pro bono. We'll fight this together. You just threw away your biggest client, she said. You can't. I can, I interrupted. And I will. She stared at me, like she was trying to figure out if I was real. Why? She whispered. I didn't have a good answer. Or maybe I did, and I wasn't ready to say it out loud. Something about this woman, her quiet courage, her unwillingness to look away from hard truths, it had cracked something open inside me. Something I'd sealed shut a long time ago. Because someone needs to, I finally said. We left the building together. Rode the elevator down 42 floors in silence. Walked out into the evening air. The city was alive around us. Car horns. Conversations. The smell of street food. Life continuing like the world hadn't just tilted. I need a drink, Margaret said suddenly. I almost laughed.
Yeah.
Me too. There was a small bar 2 blocks away. The kind of place lawyers never went. Too dim. Too quiet. Too honest. Perfect. We sat in a corner booth. Ordered whiskey. Didn't talk for the first 10 minutes. Just sat there. 2 people who'd blown up their lives in the same afternoon. How long have you known? I finally asked. About the deaths? For months. About the cover-up? 2 months. About the sales structure designed to hide everything? 3 weeks. She took a sip. Her hands were steady, but I could see the exhaustion behind her eyes. I tried everything, she continued. Every proper channel. Every right way. Nothing worked. So I did the only thing left. Crashed a contract signing. Crashed a contract signing, she confirmed. I studied her face in the dim light. That took guts, I said. That took desperation, she corrected. Guts would have been standing up 9 months ago. I waited too long. Let fear win too many times. But you stood up eventually. Eventually, she echoed. When I finally couldn't live with myself anymore. There was something about the way she said it. Like she was confessing to more than just the pharmaceutical case. What made you stop living with yourself? I asked gently. Margaret was quiet, turning her glass, watching the amber liquid catch the light. My daughter, she finally said. I waited. She's 16, Margaret continued. Smart. Brilliant, actually. Wants to be a doctor. And 6 months ago, she asked me what I did for a living. Really asked. Not the simple answer. She wanted to know if my work mattered. She looked up at me. I couldn't answer her, Margaret said softly. I realized I'd spent 20 years in research and development, made drugs that helped people, and then watched my company hide the truth when something went wrong. And I'd done nothing. So I told her I'd fix it, Margaret continued. I promised her that when people do wrong, someone has to stand up. Even if it's hard. Even if it costs everything. Her voice cracked. And then I spent 4 months trying to keep that promise while the system fought me every step. I didn't realize I was crying until I felt the tear hit my hand. I don't cry. Haven't cried in, I don't even know how long. But something about her story, about a mother trying to be the person her daughter believed she was, it shattered something in me. I have a son, I heard myself say. Margaret looked at me. 26. Lives across the country. We don't talk much anymore. Why not? I'd never told anyone this. Not partners. Not friends. Not even myself most days. Because 3 years ago, he asked me to help with something, I said quietly. His college roommate was being evicted. Illegal eviction. Clear case. Would have taken me 2 hours to fix. I stopped. Swallowed. I told him I was too busy. Told him to find legal aid. Told him I had bigger cases. The roommate ended up homeless. I continued. Dropped out of school. My son never forgave me. Said I'd become the kind of person who only helps people who can afford it. Margaret reached across the table. Put her hand on mine. He was right, I whispered.
We sat like that.
2 broken people in a dim bar. Hands touching. Both of us finally admitting the truth we'd been running from. That success, without integrity, is just expensive emptiness. That you can win every case and still lose yourself. That sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit you've been wrong. So what now? Margaret asked eventually. I looked at her hands. Still touching. Neither of us pulling away. Now we fight, I said. Together. They'll destroy us. Probably. We'll lose everything. Maybe. But we'll be able to look our kids in the eye, I said. Margaret smiled. A real smile. The first one I'd seen. Yeah, she said softly. We will. We left the bar around 9. Stood on the sidewalk. City lights reflecting off buildings. World still spinning. Where do we start? Margaret asked. Tomorrow, I said. We start tomorrow. Tonight we rest. She nodded. Started to walk away. Margaret, I called. She turned back. What you did today, I said. Stopping that signing. That was the bravest thing I've ever seen. Her eyes glistened. What you did today, she replied. Choosing the right side. That was the bravest thing I've ever seen. We stood there. 2 people who'd been strangers 12 hours ago. Now bound by something deeper than contracts or cases. Bound by the choice to do the hard right thing instead of the easy wrong thing. See you tomorrow, I said. Tomorrow, she agreed. And for the first time in years, I actually looked forward to it. The next morning started with a phone call. My senior partner. Not happy. You killed a $16 million deal, he said. No greeting. Just accusation. The deal was built on buried bodies, I replied. That's not our problem. Actually, it became our problem the moment we decided to look the other way. Silence on the line. You're suspended, he finally said. Pending review. I quit, I said. I'd never quit anything in my life. But saying it felt like finally exhaling after holding my breath for 23 years. You're making a mistake, my partner said. No, I replied. I've been making a mistake for 2 decades. This is me finally correcting it. I hung up. An hour later, I was sitting in a coffee shop with Margaret. She'd brought the files. All of them. Years of research. Patient records. Internal memos. The architecture of a cover-up laid bare. This is everything? I asked. Everything I could copy before they locked me out of the system. I started reading. Patient 1, 72-year-old male. Early dementia. Showed remarkable improvement for 3 months. Then sudden cognitive decline.
Stroke. Death.
Patient 2, 68-year-old female. Similar pattern. Improvement.
Decline.
Bleeding in the brain. 8 patients. 8 similar patterns. 8 deaths ruled as complications from underlying conditions. But buried in the research notes, handwritten observations from Margaret herself. The truth was clear. The drug worked, but only for a short window. After 3 months, it triggered something, changed something in the brain chemistry, and then it killed. They knew, I said quietly. They knew, Margaret confirmed. The lead researcher figured it out, wrote a report, recommended stopping trials immediately. What happened to the report? Disappeared. The researcher quit a week later, signed an NDA with a substantial payout. I looked up at her. How did you get this? Margaret hesitated. I was dating him, the lead researcher. We worked together for 5 years. My eyebrows rose. He tried to do the right thing, she continued, but they broke him, offered him enough money that he couldn't say no, and he took it. You're not together anymore.
No.
I couldn't look at him the same way after that. There was pain in her voice. Old pain. The kind that comes from watching someone you love choose money over integrity. I'm sorry, I said. Don't be. It taught me what I was willing to compromise, and what I wasn't. We spent the next 6 hours going through everything, building a case, connecting dots, finding patterns. The cover-up was sophisticated. Multiple layers, forged signatures, altered reports. Money moved through subsidiaries to pay off families quietly. 8 families, 8 settlements, 8 silences. They paid them off? I asked. With NDAs, Margaret confirmed. Generous settlements in exchange for silence. Most of the families were desperate. Elderly spouses, adult children with their own families. The company offered them enough money that refusing seemed cruel. But NDAs signed under false pretenses are void.
Yes.
But the families don't know that. They think they're legally bound to silence. I sat back, mind racing. We need to contact them, I said. All 8 families. Tell them the truth. The company will sue us for tortious interference. Let them. We'll counter-sue for fraud. Margaret smiled. You're really ready to burn it all down, aren't you? I thought about my son. About the roommate I didn't help. About 23 years of choosing safety over courage. Yes, I said. I'm ready. Finding the families took 3 days. Most had moved. Changed numbers. Tried to start over after losing someone. We tracked them down one by one. The first call was the hardest. Her name was Patricia, 64. Lost her husband in the trials. He was getting better, she told me over the phone. For the first time in years, he remembered things. Knew my name. Knew our anniversary. It was like getting him back. Her voice broke. And then he just collapsed. They said it was his heart. Natural causes. Mrs. Patricia, I said gently. It wasn't natural causes. Silence. What? The drug killed him. The company knew it would. And they paid you to stay quiet about it. More silence. Longer this time. You're lying, she finally whispered. I wish I was, I replied. But I have proof. And I want to help you get justice. Real justice. Not hush money. She hung up on me. I expected that. But 10 minutes later, she called back. Send me the proof, she said. By the end of the week, we'd contacted 7 of the 8 families. 5 agreed to help. 2 were too scared. 1 still hadn't responded. But 5 was enough. Margaret and I filed a class action lawsuit. Wrongful death. Corporate fraud.
Cover-up.
All of it. The story hit the news 2 days later. The pharmaceutical company's stock dropped 30% in one afternoon. The CEO gave a press conference. Denied everything. Called us disgruntled former employees spreading conspiracy theories. The board hired a crisis management team, and they came after us. Hard. The threats started immediately. Anonymous calls. Emails warning us to drop the case. Photos of our homes. Our families. One morning, I found my car keyed. Drop it, scratched across the hood. Margaret's daughter started getting followed home from school. They're trying to scare us, I told Margaret. We were in my apartment, going over depositions. Both exhausted. Both refusing to quit. It's working, she admitted. I'm terrified. Me too. She looked at me. Really looked at me. Why are you still doing this? She asked. You could walk away. I'd understand.
I thought about that. Really thought about it.
Because for the first time in 23 years, I said slowly, I'm doing something that matters. Something bigger than winning or making money or protecting my reputation. I paused. And because I'm doing it with someone who reminds me what courage actually looks like. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. I couldn't do this without you, she whispered. Yes, you could, I replied. You were doing it alone for 9 months. And it was destroying me. She reached across the table, took my hand. Having someone who believes in this, who believes in me, it changes everything. Our hands stayed connected. Something unspoken passing between us. Not romance. Not yet. Something deeper. Recognition. 2 people who'd been fighting alone suddenly realizing they didn't have to anymore. The breakthrough came 3 weeks later. Margaret got a call from someone she didn't expect. Her ex. The lead researcher who'd taken the money and disappeared. He wants to meet, she told me. It's probably a trap. I know. But what if it's not? We met him in a park. Neutral ground.
Public.
He looked terrible. Hadn't slept. Hadn't shaved. Eyes haunted. I can't do this anymore, he said immediately. I can't live with what I did. Margaret stayed calm. What are you saying? I'll testify, he said. I'll give you everything. The real data. The memos they told me to destroy. The recordings of meetings where they decided to bury the deaths. They'll destroy you, I told him.
They already destroyed me, he replied.
I destroyed myself. This is me trying to find a way to live with my reflection. He handed Margaret a USB drive. Everything's on there. Patient files. Corporate communications. Financial records showing the payoffs. All of it. Margaret took it. Hands shaking. Why now? She asked. The researcher's eyes met hers. Because I saw you on the news, he said quietly. Saw you doing what I was too afraid to do. And I realized I used to love you because you were brave. And I lost you because I wasn't. His voice cracked. I can't get you back. I know that. But maybe I can help you in this. Maybe that's enough. Margaret was crying now. So was he. 2 people who'd loved each other once. Destroyed by fear and greed and compromise. But maybe, just maybe, finding redemption in truth. The trial started 8 weeks later. Packed courtroom. National media. 8 families in the front row. The pharmaceutical company brought 12 lawyers. We had 3. Me, Margaret, and a junior associate who believed in lost causes. The odds were not in our favor. But something had shifted. The USB drive changed everything. Internal memos. Smoking gun evidence. The architecture of evil laid bare. The company knew they were in trouble. Day 1 of testimony. The lead researcher took the stand.
Told a story.
Told the truth. Admitted his part in the cover-up. I was offered $500,000, he said. To stay quiet. To let people die. And I took it. His voice broke. I took it because I was afraid. Afraid of losing my career. My reputation. My comfortable life. But the truth doesn't care about comfort, he continued. And neither do the families of the people who died, because I stayed silent. The defense tried to break him on cross-examination. You're a disgruntled ex-employee, they accused. I'm a coward trying to do one right thing, he replied. You signed an NDA. I signed away my integrity. I'm taking it back. Day 3, Margaret testified. Walked the jury through the research.
The deaths.
The patterns. She was brilliant.
Clear.
Compelling. But more than that, she was human. These weren't just patient numbers, she said, holding up photos. This was Gregory, father of 3. This was Linda, grandmother of 7. This was Marcus, veteran who survived 2 wars but not our drug. They trusted us, Margaret continued. They came to us desperate for help, for hope. And we gave them false hope. And then we gave them graves. And then we gave their families money to forget. She looked directly at the defense table. But I won't forget. And I won't let anyone else forget either. The courtroom was silent. Even the defense lawyers looked uncomfortable. Day 7, the CEO testified. Tried to deny everything. Blamed subordinates. Claimed ignorance. But the documents didn't lie. His signature was on the memos. His emails approved the payoffs. His fingerprints were all over the cover-up. I cross-examined him for 4 hours. Mr. CEO, I said, did you know about the deaths? I was informed of complications. Complications. Is that what you call 8 people dying? Every drug trial has risks. Did you know the drug was causing those deaths? Silence. Did you know? I repeated. We had theories. Theories? Or certainties? Because your own researcher wrote a report calling for immediate cessation of trials. You read that report, didn't you? You read it. And instead of stopping the trials, you buried the report, paid off the researcher, and continued selling the drug. Isn't that true? He looked at his lawyers, looking for an escape. There wasn't one. We believe the benefits outweighed the risks, he finally said. Benefits to whom? I asked quietly. The 8 people who died, or your stock price? The jury's faces told the story. Disgust. Anger. Clarity. They'd seen enough. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Closing arguments came on a Friday. I stood before the jury, exhausted, emotionally drained, but clear. This case is simple. I began. A company created a drug that killed people. They knew it killed people, and they hid the truth to protect their profits. I gestured to the families. These 8 families trusted them, believed in them, and they were betrayed in the worst possible way. The defense will tell you this is about business, about complicated pharmaceutical science, about regulatory gray areas. I paused. But it's not. It's about 8 lives, 8 families, 8 chances for justice. You have the power to say that truth matters, that lives matter, that companies can't hide behind money and lawyers when they do wrong. I looked at each juror. 8 people are gone. We can't bring them back, but we can make sure they didn't die in vain. We can make sure this never happens again. Give these families justice. Please. I sat down. The courtroom was silent. Margaret squeezed my hand under the table, and we waited. The jury deliberated for 11 hours. We sat in a conference room nearby. Margaret, the families, the junior associate. Nobody talked much. What was there to say? Either we'd won or we'd lost. Either justice existed or it didn't. At 6 p.m., we got the call. Verdict was in. Walking back into that courtroom was the longest walk of my life. Margaret beside me. Families behind us. Reporters filling the gallery. The jury filed in. I tried to read their faces. Couldn't. Has the jury reached a verdict? The judge asked. We have, Your Honor. In the matter of Ross v. MedTech Pharmaceuticals, on the charge of wrongful death, how do you find? We find in favor of the plaintiffs. The courtroom exploded. Crying. Cheering. Reporters rushing out to file stories. The families collapsed into each other's arms. Years of grief and silence finally acknowledged. Finally seen. Margaret grabbed my hand. Squeezed so hard it hurt. We didn't celebrate. Not yet. Because the foreman wasn't done. On the charge of corporate fraud, guilty. On the charge of negligent homicide, guilty. On the charge of conspiracy to conceal material facts, guilty. Each word hit like a hammer. Each word was another brick in the wall of justice we've been building. And on the matter of damages, the foreman continued, we award the plaintiffs compensatory damages of $42 million. The defense lawyers went pale. And punitive damages of $230 million. The CEO stood up, face red, started to say something. The judge gavelled him down. The jury has spoken, she said firmly. This court finds MedTech Pharmaceuticals guilty on all counts. Sentencing will be scheduled for next month. She looked at the CEO. And Mr. CEO, you should know, the district attorney's office has been notified of these proceedings. I expect criminal charges will follow. He sat down. For the first time since I'd met him, he looked small. All that power, all that money, all those lawyers. None of it mattered when the truth finally came out. Outside the courthouse, we were swarmed by reporters. How does it feel to win? What message does this send? Will you pursue criminal charges? Margaret stepped to the microphones. This isn't about winning, she said quietly, but her voice carried. This is about 8 families finally getting the truth. Finally being heard. She gestured to Patricia, the first family member we'd contacted. These families suffered in silence for years. Bound by NDAs they didn't understand. Paid off with money that could never replace what they'd lost. Today, we're saying that silence ends, Margaret continued. That companies can't hide behind contracts when they do wrong. That truth matters more than profit. A reporter called out. What do you say to other whistleblowers afraid to come forward? Margaret looked at the camera. I'd say it's terrifying. I'd say you'll lose sleep and friends, and maybe your career. I'd say they'll threaten you and try to break you and make you wish you'd stayed quiet. But I'd also say you'll be able to look yourself in the mirror. You'll be able to look your kids in the eye. You'll know that when it mattered, you chose right over easy. Her voice strengthened. And you won't be alone. Because somewhere out there, someone else will stand with you. Someone else will believe in you. And together, you'll be stronger than you ever were apart. She looked at me as she said it. And I understood. This wasn't just about the case anymore. It was about what we'd found in the process. Partnership. Purpose. Someone to stand with when the world pushed back. Comment below, who's the person who stands with you when things get hard? Tag them. That night, Margaret and I sat on a bench in a park near the courthouse. City lights reflecting off a nearby pond. The chaos of the day finally quiet. We did it, she said softly. You did it, I corrected. I just helped. No. She turned to look at me. Without you, I would have given up 100 times. Every threat. Every setback. Every moment I thought I couldn't keep going. You were there. We were there, I said. For each other. She smiled. That real smile I'd grown to recognize. Yeah. We were. We sat in comfortable silence. Not the awkward silence of strangers. The easy silence of people who'd been through fire together and came out the other side changed. My daughter wants to meet you, Margaret said eventually. Yeah. She said she's never seen me happier. Even with all the stress. Even with everything. She paused. She said I seem like myself again. I thought about my son. About the phone call I'd made 3 days ago. I called my son, I told her. After the verdict. What did he say? He said he saw the news. Saw me standing up for something that mattered. He said. My voice caught. He said he was proud of me. First time he said that in 3 years. Margaret reached over. Took my hand. See, she said gently. We're not just fixing cases. We're fixing ourselves. And that's when I understood. This whole thing, from the moment she whispered, don't sign that, to now, had never just been about exposing corporate fraud. It was about 2 broken people finding each other at exactly the right time. Finding someone who understood that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's being terrified and doing the right thing anyway. It's standing up when every instinct says sit down. It's choosing truth even when lies are more profitable. Margaret, I said. She looked at me. Thank you. For what? For walking into that conference room. For stopping me from being complicit in something terrible. For reminding me why I became a lawyer in the first place. For showing me that it's never too late to choose differently. Her eyes glistened with tears. You did the same for me, she whispered. I was drowning. Alone. Convinced I was crazy for caring when everyone else seemed fine looking away. She squeezed my hand. You believed me. When no one else did. That changed everything. We sat there, as the night deepened. Two people who'd been strangers 4 months ago. Now what? Friends didn't capture it. Partners was closer. But something else was growing between us. Something neither of us was quite ready to name. What happens now? Margaret asked.
Now.
I smiled. Now we figure out what's next. Together? If you want. She leaned her head on my shoulder. Yeah, she said softly. I want. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, the future felt like something worth looking forward to. 3 days after the verdict, things got complicated. The pharmaceutical company filed for bankruptcy. $272 million in damages they couldn't pay. Stock worthless. Board resigned. CEO facing criminal charges. The company that had existed for 3 generations, gone in a matter of weeks. And everyone was looking at us like we'd murdered it. The media narrative shifted. Whistleblowers destroy American company. 8 deaths lead to 3,000 job losses. Justice or revenge? The true cost of the medtech verdict. Margaret got death threats.
So did I.
Former employees who'd lost their pensions. Investors who'd lost millions. People who'd built their lives around a company that no longer existed. They blamed us. We killed jobs, Margaret said one morning. We were in her apartment. She hadn't slept. Neither had I. We exposed murder. I corrected. 3,000 people are unemployed because of us. 8 people are dead because of them. But the guilt was there. Real. Heavy. Because truth is complicated. Yes, we got injustice for 8 families. But 3,000 other families were now struggling. The righteous victory suddenly felt murkier. Do you regret it? I asked her. Margaret was quiet for a long time. No, she finally said. But I wish there'd been a way to hold them accountable without hurting innocent people. There wasn't. I know, but that doesn't make it easier. She looked at me. Is this what doing the right thing always feels like? This complicated. I thought about my career. 23 years of simple victories. Clear wins. Uncomplicated success. I don't know, I admitted. Maybe real justice is always messy. A week later, Margaret's daughter came to dinner. First time I was meeting her. I was nervous. Her name was Sophie. 16 going on 40. Sharp eyes that missed nothing. We met at a small Italian restaurant. Quiet corner table. Sophie studied me for a full minute before saying anything. So you're the lawyer who helped my mom blow up a pharmaceutical company, she finally said. Sophie. Margaret started. It's okay, I interrupted. Looked at Sophie directly.
Yes.
That's me. Cool, Sophie said. Margaret blinked.
Cool. Yeah.
I mean, most of Mom's boyfriends are boring. This one actually did something interesting. I nearly choked on my water. We're not, Margaret stammered. He's not my... Sophie rolled her eyes.
Mom, please.
You talk about him constantly. You smile when you say his name. You're totally dating. Margaret turned red.
So did I.
Because we weren't dating. Were we? We're colleagues, Margaret managed. Colleagues who hold hands, Sophie pointed out. We were. It was emotional. Colleagues who look at each other like that. Like what? Sophie gestured vaguely between us. Like, I don't know. Like you're both scared and hopeful at the same time. Like you found something you didn't know you were looking for. 16 years old. And she just articulated exactly what I'd been feeling for weeks. I looked at Margaret.
She looked at me.
Neither of us knew what to say. Can we order? Sophie asked cheerfully. I'm starving. And watching you two figure out you're in love is making me hungry. We're not in love, Margaret started. But her voice was uncertain. And something in my chest tightened. Because maybe we were. That night, after dinner, Margaret walked me to my car. Sophie had gone ahead to wait in their car, giving us space. I'm sorry about her, Margaret said. She's direct. She's honest. I corrected. I like her. Even though she basically announced we're dating to an entire restaurant. I smiled. We're not dating though, right? Margaret stopped walking, turned to face me. I don't know, she said quietly. What are we? Good question. We'd been through hell together, held each other up through threats and fear and the hardest fight of our lives. We talked every day, sometimes for hours. We held hands without thinking about it. When something good happened, she was the first person I wanted to tell. When something bad happened, she was the first person I needed. I think, I said slowly, we're two people who found each other at exactly the right time, who've been through something extraordinary together. And who? I trailed off. Who what? Margaret prompted softly. Who care about each other, I finished. More than colleagues. More than friends. But, she asked, but we've been so focused on the case, on the fight, on surviving. I don't know if what we feel is real or if it's just trauma bonding. Margaret considered that. My therapist says trauma bonding is when someone manipulates you through cycles of abuse and relief, she said.
This isn't that.
What is this then? She stepped closer. I think this is two people who've been alone for a long time, who fought for something that mattered, who saw each other at their worst and their best, and who discovered they don't want to go back to being alone. My heart was pounding. Margaret. I'm not asking for anything, she interrupted gently. I'm just naming what's here. What's been growing between us? I'm 52 years old, I said. Failed marriage. A strange son. Career I just threw away. I'm not exactly a great catch. I'm 47, she countered. Single mom. Unemployed whistleblower with a legal target on her back. I'm not winning any prizes either. She smiled. But maybe that's the point. Maybe we're not looking for perfect. Just real. I wanted to kiss her. Standing there under the streetlight. City humming around us. Her face tilted up toward mine. But something held me back. I don't want to mess this up, I admitted. Whatever this is, it matters too much. So we go slow, Margaret said. We figured out together. Like we've figured out everything else. Together, I echoed. Together, she confirmed. And she took my hand. Not a romantic gesture exactly. Just connection.
Partnership.
The promise that whatever came next, we'd face it side by side. 2 weeks later, everything fell apart. The lead researcher, Margaret's ex who testified for us, was found dead. Apparent suicide. Note left behind apologizing for everything. But Margaret didn't believe it. He was getting better, she told the police. He was going to therapy, reconnecting with his family. He was guilty, yes, but he was dealing with it. People hide depression, the detective said gently. He didn't hide anything from me, Margaret insisted. We talked 3 days ago. He was fine. Better than fine. He was hopeful. But the police ruled it suicide. Case closed. Margaret was devastated. Not because she still loved him, but because she'd pushed him to testify. Put him in danger. And now he was gone. This is my fault, she said. We were in her apartment. She'd been crying for hours. No, I said firmly. If this wasn't suicide, if someone killed him, that's on them. Not you. I convinced him to come forward. I knew they'd retaliate. He chose to come forward. He made that choice. But I could see the guilt eating her alive. I started digging. Talked to the coroner. Reviewed the autopsy report. Interviewed neighbors. Something didn't add up. The researcher was left-handed. But the gunshot wound suggested a right-handed shooter. His apartment showed signs of a struggle. Lamp knocked over. Picture frame cracked. The suicide note was typed. Not handwritten. No signature. It was murder, I told Margaret. The police don't believe that. Then we make them believe it. But Margaret shook her head. I can't, she whispered. I can't do this again. I can't fight another battle. I can't. I'm too tired. I sat beside her. Took her hands. Then don't fight, I said gently. Let me. You can't do this alone. You did it alone for 9 months. I can do it for a while. She looked at me, eyes red, exhausted. Why? She asked. Why keep going? We won. We got justice. Why risk more? I thought about that. Because 8 families got justice, I said. But he deserves it too. He did the right thing in the end. He deserves the truth. And because I continued, if we stop now, they win. They scare us into silence. And every other whistleblower watching learns that speaking up gets you killed and forgotten. Margaret was quiet. I'm so tired, she finally said. I know. I don't know if I can keep being brave. Then be tired, I told her. Be scared. Be human. You don't have to be brave every second. That's why you have me. She started crying again. But this time, she leaned into me. Let me hold her. Let someone else carry the weight for a while. And I realized this was love. Not the movie version. Not the sweep you off your feet romance. But the real thing. Showing up when it's hard. Holding someone when they break. Being strong when they can't be. Staying. I spent the next 3 weeks investigating. Margaret rested. Spent time with Sophie. Tried to heal. I followed paper trails. Interviewed people. Built a case. And slowly, piece by piece, the truth emerged. The researcher hadn't killed himself. He'd been murdered. By someone connected to Medteca's board. Someone who'd lost everything in the bankruptcy and wanted revenge. I brought the evidence to the police. They reopened the investigation. Made an arrest within a week. Former VP of operations. Lost his pension. His savings. His future. And decided that if he was going down, he'd take the whistleblowers with him. The researcher was dead. But he hadn't died a coward. He died because he told the truth. That mattered. Margaret attended the memorial service. So did I. Small gathering. The researcher's family. A few colleagues. Us. His sister gave a eulogy. My brother made mistakes, she said. Big ones. He stayed silent when he should have spoken. He took money when he should have stood up. She paused. But in the end, he chose right. He testified. He told the truth. And he paid for it with his life. That doesn't erase his mistakes, she continued. But it means something. It means he died trying to be better than he was. And maybe that's all any of us can hope for. After the service, Margaret stood by his grave for a long time. I waited nearby, giving her space. Finally, she spoke. I forgive you, she said quietly, for taking the money, for staying silent, for choosing fear. And I'm sorry, she continued. Sorry I wasn't strong enough to protect you. Sorry my fight cost you your life. Her voice broke. But thank you, for finding your courage. Even if it came late, even if it cost everything. She turned and walked back to me. Okay, she said. I'm ready. Ready for what? Ready to keep going. Ready to fight the next fight. Ready to make sure he didn't die for nothing. And I saw it in her eyes. The grief was still there. But so was something else. Purpose. Renewed. Forged in fire. Unbreakable. 6 months later, Margaret and I opened our own firm. Small office. 2 desks. No fancy furniture, but a clear mission. We represented whistleblowers. People who'd seen wrong and spoken up. People the system tried to silence. We took cases nobody else would touch. We fought battles everyone said we'd lose. And slowly, case by case, we started winning. Not every case. Not even most cases. But enough. Enough to matter. Enough to make a difference. Enough to know we were doing what we were meant to do. The pharmaceutical families stayed in touch. Patricia, the first one we'd contacted, sent us a letter. You gave us back our voices, she wrote. For years, we thought we had to stay silent. You showed us that silence protects the guilty. Only truth protects the innocent. The letter ended. Thank you for being brave enough to care. Margaret cried when she read it. Good tears this time. Sophie graduated high school that spring. Top of her class. Full scholarship to pre-med. Margaret threw a party. Small gathering. Close friends. I was there. Of course I was there. Speech, someone called. Sophie stood up. Smiled at her mom. When I was 14, I asked my mom if her work mattered, Sophie began. She couldn't answer me then. But she can now. I watched her lose everything to do the right thing, Sophie continued.
Her job.
Her security. Almost her life. And I watched her keep going anyway. She looked at Margaret. You taught me that bravery isn't about not being scared. It's about being terrified and doing what's right anyway. And you taught me that sometimes the most important thing you can do is stand up when everyone else sits down. Speak up when everyone else stays silent. Choose truth even when lies are easier. Margaret was crying.
So was I.
So was everyone in the room. I'm going to be a doctor, Sophie finished. And I'm going to be the kind of doctor who tells patients the truth even when it's hard. Who stands up for what's right even when it costs me. She raised her glass. Because my mom showed me how. Later that night, Margaret and I sat on her balcony. Party over. Sophie asleep inside. City quiet below. Your daughter is incredible, I said. She is, Margaret agreed. She's everything I hoped I'd be. You are everything she thinks you are. Margaret smiled. I'm trying to be. She leaned her head on my shoulder. We'd been doing that more lately. Small touches. Easy affection. We still hadn't labeled what we were.
Didn't need to.
Whatever it was, it worked. Do you ever regret it? Margaret asked. Walking away from your old life. Your partnership? Your reputation?
I thought about that.
No, I said. I regret that I waited so long. That I spent 23 years building the wrong thing. But I don't regret you. I continued. Don't regret this. Don't regret finally doing work that matters. Even though we're broke? Even though we're broke? Even though we're still fighting battles? Especially because we're still fighting battles. She lifted her head, looked at me. I love you, she said simply. No drama. No fanfare. Just truth. My breath caught. I love you too, I said. I think I have for months. I just didn't know how to say it. You didn't have to say it, Margaret replied. You showed it. Every time you stood beside me. Every time you believed me. Every time you chose this life over the easy one. That's how I knew, she continued. Love isn't about big gestures. It's about the small choices. The daily decision to show up. To stand together. To keep going. She took my hand. It's about whispering don't sign that when everyone else stays silent. And I kissed her. Finally. After months of almost. Of maybe. Of not quite yet. I kissed her. And it felt like coming home. The firm was thriving. 10 employees now. Bigger office. Cases across the country. We'd won landmark decisions. Changed laws. Protected dozens of whistleblowers. My son came to visit. First time in 6 years. He met Margaret. Met Sophie. Saw the life I'd built from the ashes of the old one. I'm proud of you, Dad, he said. Words I'd waited years to hear. I'm proud of me too, I admitted. For the first time in a long time. Margaret and I got married quietly. Small ceremony. Just Sophie, my son, the 8 families, and a few close friends. No big production. Just 2 people making official what had been true for years. That we were partners. In everything. The pharmaceutical case became a documentary. Don't sign that. Named after the words that started everything. It premiered at film festivals. Won awards. Inspired other whistleblowers. We didn't make money from it. We donated everything to a fund for families affected by pharmaceutical negligence. It felt right. Patricia, the widow who'd first agreed to help us, sent flowers on our wedding day. The card read, "Thank you for showing us that 3 words can change the world. Congratulations on your love story. You both deserve it." 5 years after that conference room, I was sitting in her office. Late evening. Reviewing a new case. Margaret walked in. Held up her phone. You need to see this, she said. It was a news article. Former MedTech CEO sentenced to 15 years for manslaughter. Justice. Finally. Completely. Margaret sat beside me. We did it, she said softly. We did, I agreed. Do you ever think about that day? She asked. The moment you decided to listen to me instead of closing the deal? I smiled. Every day. Regrets? Not one. She kissed me gently. Me neither. And sitting there, 5 years later, married to the woman who'd saved my soul, doing work that mattered, finally at peace, I understood something profound. Life doesn't give you many chances to choose differently, to turn away from the easy path, to listen to the quiet voice warning you not to sign away your integrity. But when it does, when someone whispers, "Don't sign that," and the room goes silent, that's when you discover who you really are.
And who you want to be.
I chose right. I chose truth. I chose her. And it changed everything. Sometimes the most important words are the quietest ones. 3 words that stopped a signature. 3 words that exposed a lie. 3 words that saved 8 families. 3 words that changed 2 lives forever.
Don't sign that.
What will your 3 words be? Thank you for staying with this story. If it moved you, if it made you think, if it reminded you that courage matters, please share it. Someone needs to hear this today. And remember, you never know when your voice, even a whisper, might change everything. And every story here carries a lesson, a warning, or a miracle. Subscribe. Your next breakthrough might be one story away.